And if we get started with a warm-up, the very first exercise in our warm-up is a lunge, pulse. So this is going to be a hip flexor stretch where you're simply going to be getting in a lunge position, staying as tall as possible and focusing all of our work on the hip flexor. So we're going to stay in a closed position, hips facing forward, and all you're going to do is you're going to simply rock forward into a deep position, bringing your hip down towards your heel. So just in and out for desired reps. You're welcome to hold any position as long as you want. So if you wish to hold the position here if needed and rotate and twist, totally fine. It is your warm-up. We're going to keep it dynamic, meaning moving, while we go through this. So you can play around with as much as you need. Just like all the other sessions, you make this what you really require for a proper warm-up. It does have reps and set schemes. You can use a time domain, maybe doing this for 30 to 60 seconds. It's up to you. Again, you can add pauses, whatever you want. You can hold and move. You can reach back if needed. Okay, and you can open up your full front line. I think the warm-ups are really important to make them based on how you feel. So you play around with this however you wish. Now our second exercise in the warm-up is the elephant walk, one of my personal favorites. So what you're going to do is you're going to be starting in a standing position with feet about hip width apart. Our very first exercise was focused on the hip flexors. Now we're going to focus on the hamstrings. So you're going to think about turning the pelvis backwards, driving the hips back while turning the pelvis over. You're going to reach down as far as you feel comfortable, and you're going to start to pulse each leg independently, straightening one at a time. So I'll do it here first. One leg straight, pull out. One leg straight, hold for a half to 1 second, and then to the other leg. You're going to do this for the desired or the programmed amount of reps, or as stated earlier, whatever you need to feel loose and limber. Now, as you do this, you're going to progress. Maybe some of you are going to be standing here with hands on knees, hands on mid shins, hands on ankles, toes ground. If you have the capacity, you want to start reaching down to put your palms onto the floor. If you already have that, you're welcome to reach back, grab onto your heels. You're welcome to put your full palms under your feet and perform your elephant walks here. Whatever you feel is necessary. But one of the things you want to think about when getting into elephant walk is the idea of compressing and lengthening your position. So think about turning the pelvis back and reaching your torso over your thighs and down. That way we really start to focus on getting a stretch through the entire posterior chain. As I say that, remember, the goal is not necessarily only to stretch out the upper back and lower back, but primarily the hamstrings. So let's make sure we're focusing our weight backward so that you get the pressure into the hamstrings, which is going to be more important for the front squat work, okay? So if I go to the side, you're going to see that this can be done in different ways. If I'm doing my elephant walk here, that's fine, but we can also push our hips back and focus on driving the hip back as we do our position. This is going to focus our work more towards the hamstrings, which is what we're trying to isolate in this position. So go ahead and do the repetitions required or programmed for this session. Now the third exercise is a combination of an end range lift off for the hip flexors, a balance exercise, almost like a single leg deadlift, but because it's a control exercise, you're going to use the deep internal and external rotators of the hip, and you're going to use them in a different manner that's going to create stability as well as control. So all you're going to do is you're going to stand on one foot. You're welcome to hold a object for balance. It's totally fine, but if you can do without, all the better. You're going to lift your leg as high as you can, slowly pull it back, and go into an airplane position. That's one rep. Come back up the top, lift. If you want to hold that top position for a couple seconds, it's fine. Shift over into your airplane position. Again, thinking stretch the hamstrings. But again, what you're going to start to feel is how much hip control and stability requires to do this exercise properly, which then is going to properly warm up the hip for all the work that is to come. A fantastic exercise to warm up front split work. All right, guys. A1 in our couplet of our 2A exercises is a rear glute pulse in lunge. So this is kind of similar to our warm-up exercise where we did a bit of a true pulse back and forth, but in this one the pulse is actually going to be more of a contraction. So you're going to try and find your end range, keeping your hips closed and your chest up nice and tall, and you're going to do for reps is a contraction of the glutes where you squeeze the glutes, turn the pelvis over and drive the hip down, and you're going to maintain your position throughout. Your front leg can be wherever you want right now. It's not that important, okay? The main goal is that you're getting a hip flexor stretch in your rear leg. So hands on hips or wherever you want. You can use support if needed. You'll find your end range. You're going to squeeze the glute as hard as you can for about 5 seconds, and then just relax, but don't change the position. Then squeeze the glute and try and drop a bit deeper into the stretch and relax, and then do this for the repetitions that are required. Now the goal here is that you're going to start to understand how the glute controls the hip and how we can use glute contractions to enhance the hip flexor, front of the hip stretch. So the pelvis turns around and pushes us forward into a deeper hip flexor stretch. Now with this extended position, you're going to primarily feel us high in the hip flexors rather than down into the quad. So you're going to feel it where most of people are more tight, which is going to be your one joint hip flexors. Think of your psoas or iliacus. So the big movers, which are going to be very important to all the work that we have to do. Now the A2 exercise is a hamstring contraction. So this one is very similar to the A1 glute contractions. What we're gonna do, we're gonna be in a kneeling position and you're gonna find your hamstring stretch. Now, I'm gonna challenge you in 2 different ways to do this. You can do it from a lunging position, right? Or you can do it from a more seated position where you're sitting back on towards your heels. The real important part here is that you're making sure you understand hips again. So you're taking that pelvis and you're turning it forward, and you're reaching your chest to try and find that hamstring, so the rear of the straight leg stretch. That's what we're looking for. This can be found here or down the bottom position, doesn't much matter. Now, whatever feels more comfortable to you is just fine. Now, the contraction in this one is going to be to drive the heel down and pull it towards yourself. So you find your end stretch, you hold it, and then you're going to do your light contraction, pushing down into the floor. Imagine pawing the hamstring back towards you, or the heel. So you can do this in 2 different ways. You can drive the heel down, or you can even lightly bend the knee and think about pulling it towards you, which really engages the hamstring. And then you're gonna lean deeper into the stretch. So after every contraction, you're gonna fall into the stretch a little farther, a little farther. Now, when you go through the 5 to 8 contractions that we have programmed, you're gonna end up in each one of these positions, being the hip flexor and the hamstring, for about 30 to 45 seconds, depending on your counting speed. And that's what's gonna really emphasize the stretch and ensure that we're properly warmed up for the next exercise to come, which is one of my favorites, the blocked hip extension. All right, the blocked hip extension. Now, you don't necessarily need a block to do this. You can do this with any implement, anything in the house that you can find that can be stacked and used as a reference of range of motion. And the hard part on this one is going to be is that everyone's going to be in a different position, which is going to require a slightly different sized block. Now, a traditional yoga block will have different sizes where you can place it in different positions. If you had multiple, you can also stack them. Now, this exercise is a version of the ATG split squat. So now you can use a support for this, which I'm going to use this dock pail here. Now the ATG split squat is where you have really 3 focuses. Drive your front knee forward over the middle toe, deep into the deepest knee flexion position that you can tolerate, while trying to keep your back leg straight and your chest up. Now the difference in this one is going to be is that when we get into this position, we may think of this as a long lunge rather than an ATG, but that's okay. Whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. We're going to have a block here, and our focus is going to be on the hip flexors. So I'm going to try and have this out of the way as much as possible. Now the way we're going to do this is we're going to get into our deepest position, contract that back leg, and find a block that we can put on there. So it's just underneath my thigh. As soon as I feel it touch my thigh, my responsibility is to squeeze my back leg, squeeze and contract my quad so I don't touch the block. And as we go through sets of this, we're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we can start to modify our front leg. The position of the front leg doesn't really matter. What we want to do is maximize the back hip flexor stretch. So we could be doing this in a position more like the ATG, where the front foot is closer and we're up on the ball of our foot. That's fine. It really depends on your flexibility. And then when I get here, you can see I can now get a little bit lower, but I'm going to fight to get that back leg straight. So I'll use the block as my reference. So even though I'm on my ball of my front foot, I can feel the block touching my shorts. I'm going to squeeze my back leg, stay tall, and keep that block from touching my leg, my hip flexor, or you can even put it under your knee if you wanted. So if you were to do that, you would simply get into your long lunge position, have the block under your knee, and extend the knee off of the block. And then you can use different positions for block there as well. You're gonna find no matter how you do this, it's gonna be a very deep hip flexor stretch, and that is exactly what we're looking for. And we're gonna hold this one for 45 seconds, which is gonna be a true challenge, guys, to be able to hang on to this position and hold that rear leg contraction. And remember, last thing, guys, keep your chest tall while doing this. If we're leaning forward, it's going to lose the hip flexor stretch. Our goal is to remain upright and keep our back leg as straight as possible. Everyone's going to get into different positions here. If you are very, very close to the front split, you may simply just have yourself almost in a full front split, just focusing on your back leg, okay? It really depends where you're at. If you have questions, just throw them in the comments. All right, now our next exercise is the pike lift off. Now, this can be done in a lot of different ways. The ideal way would be to have our elevation, so whatever we're gonna place our heel on, to be at our end range of our active range of motion. Now, I just don't have the tools here available, which you may not at home as well, but we'll just assume I did. So if I was, I would test my active range of motion by lifting my leg as high as I can and hold for 15 seconds while remaining straight with the knee, the standing leg knee straight. So let's just assume that that was here. I then want to put a block maybe about 2 inches underneath that. So if you're at the gym, you can use blocks, boxes, whatever might work, okay? That way your contraction is going to be just short of your end range. Having said that though, this can be done in lots of different ways. So I'm on the dock, I'm going to use this dock pail here, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to get into my end range stretch here, and I'm going to find that deep hamstring stretch. So it's very similar to the exercise that we did just a little bit earlier, but this time we're in a standing position. So I'm going to push the hips back, turning the pelvis over as much as I can. The leg bending here is immaterial as long as you're feeling that stretch here. You're going to get your end range, and you're going to then perform a 5 second, and make sure it's a nice slow 5 second, up to 8 contraction against the pail. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to stand and lift your leg off and hold for 5. Don't be scared. You may very quickly get into cramp city here in your quads. You're then going to go back down, find your end range, contract again, 5 to 8 seconds. Stand, lift, and hold for 5 to 8 seconds. This combines a lot of good work. It combines a really aggressive hamstring stretch with end range strength in our hip flexors, which is what we've been doing with our L-sits and all different variations. Now, I have the dock pail, of course. I'm sure you can find something, a staircase, what have you. But again, this can even be done in a kneeling position if you wanted, like we were before, where you were maybe kneeling back and you're gonna do a contraction in end range, and then you're simply gonna do your L-sit lift off, where you're gonna do L-sit lift off like this, okay? It's the exact same position. Find the stretch, contract down for 5 to 8 seconds, relax, lean back as much as is necessary in this one, lift for 5 to 8 seconds, and you do your desired repetitions here. Generally, this is done for 3 to 5 repetitions. I believe in this program, it was programmed as 4 repetitions. So 5 to 8 second contraction, which is going to be 10 to 16 seconds per rep for 4 reps, which means you're going to be here for close to a minute. Okay, our other exercise that we're going to combine with the contraction is our couch stretch. Now, I actually don't have access to a wall here, so couch stretch is not going to be something that I have access to, but I'm going to show you 2 variations which can be used at a modification. Now, if you have a wall at home, just simply check the video up here where I have overlaid, which is going to be the couch stretch we use from session 2. If you don't have access to this, here are 2 possible variations that you can use. The first one, again, may require something to hang on to, so I could use a chair or whatever it might be, but just simply be a classic old quadricep stretch here, where you're going to squeeze and push your hips forward and bring your heel as close to your buttocks as you can. Then you're going to perform your contractions by pushing your foot backwards this way against your hand for a total of 5 seconds, then relax. 5 seconds against, and then relax. And you'll do that for the repetitions. That's just fine. Now, again, you're gonna need some kind of a support to work off of to do that. Another way, which might be a bit more advanced for some, to get a similar stretch would be to get into a lunge position and then to reach back and grab onto the quad here, okay? So you can see how this looks a bit more like the couch stretch position. Now you're gonna be fairly flexible to be able to do this. You can also drop into what's called a low hip position versus a high, which a couch stretch is traditionally considered a high stretch, but you're gonna find the position that's most comfortable and from a standpoint of balance, and then you're gonna perform your stretch here. Now again, you can just use isometrics, just hold the stretch for 30 to 45 seconds, or you can perform your contractions. Same thing. I'm just gonna gonna kick my foot back this way against my hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Relax. Try and fall a little bit deeper into a stretch. Contract again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Relax the contraction and do that for the required amount of reps. So now there are 3 variations of the couch stretch that are available to you. The traditional couch stretch, the standing quadricep stretch, which I think is the least advantageous, and then the leg elevated or rear foot elevated lunge variation. And again, use contract relax as is programmed, or simply an isometric hold in that position for a minimum of 30 seconds per set. All right, guys, now our final exercise, which is really designed to be more of a cool down stretch, but exercise to take our hip through a nice big range of motion. Usually in program, people really enjoy this stretch. It's a really fantastic one. It's programmed with a band. You can use a belt, a strap, a string, which again, on the dock, I did not have access to any of these things. So I found my niece's life jacket. So we're gonna use this Spider-Man life jacket for our drill. So thank you, Misha. All right, now what we're gonna do is you're gonna lie on your back and you're going to place your leg into your band. In this case, I'm gonna use the life jacket, okay? Now what we're gonna do is you're gonna create tension. You're gonna start from the bottom position. You're gonna pull your leg up as far as you can, keeping your other leg straight, sorry. Okay, you're gonna pull your leg up as far as you can, and then just slowly swing the leg all the way around back to the starting position, and then reverse in the opposite direction, come all the way up the top and back down. Now you're not putting a ton of tension on whatever you're using, in this case my life jacket, but what you're doing is just using it as resistance to get the deepest possible stretch that you can. Now while doing this, try and keep your hips down on both sides rather than rotating, twisting all over the place. Having said that though, reminder that this stretch is meant to be partial cool down. So just chase the feeling, chase the stretch, feel and move through whatever feels to you is gonna work best, okay? So you're gonna do this for the required repetitions as programmed or as many as you need. The warm-ups and the cool downs are truly up to you as to how you would like to maximize them. That doesn't mean you can't hold certain positions for longer, right? We're not focusing on middle split work or the adductors too much in this session, but it's always nice to incorporate them into whatever we're doing. So in this case, you can move through these ranges however you like. But this is the supine hip circles with a band or a life jacket, okay? All right, guys, that closes up the 3rd session. If you have questions, throw them in the comments. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.